Hello and welcome to another Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. It is a beautiful day to talk about jazz. And you know what? It's also awesome because we have a master educator, performer, you name it, Professor Brandon Robertson. And guess what? He's doing the What I Love About series today, and he's none other than Charnett Moffett. So I know you are going to be entertained. You're going to be wowed today because it's a bass player, and Brandon's always giving us the inside scoop. So I want to remind you, if you're joining us live, there's a chat feature in there. If you have any questions, just go up in there and type your questions. We're going to leave some time at the end to answer anything like that. And I want to remind you that this wouldn't be possible without our awesome sponsors. So please be sure to check out the studio archives of the past video sessions at clearwaterjazz.com education outreach section. And that's brought to you by our friends over there, Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as our Young Lions podcast available wherever you stream. And that's brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. Just search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I mean, what can I say? Brandon has brought us so many great sessions from talking about the business, improvisation, constructing bass lines, and he's also done many of these What I Love About series, but you got to go back in the archives to check those out. And if you don't know who this man is, Brandon Robertson is an Emmy-nominated music director, professional upright electric bassist, composer, and music educator, originally from Tampa, Florida. Some people call it Tampa, Florida. So he received his Bachelor of Arts in Music from Florida State University in 2009 and his Master's of Music and Jazz Studies in spring of 2016. And currently you can catch him down there in Fort Myers at Florida Gulf Coast University, where he's the basketball band director, the jazz studies director. I mean, he is doing it big down there. And if you don't know, he has some music. Of course, this guy will have some music because he's been on stages with world famous Count Basie band. I mean, Wyclef Gordon. Just played with Wyclef, right? Is that right, Brandon?
Last Friday.
Last Friday. So this man is in high demand. So check his album out based on a true story. But without any further delay, I want to present to you my good friend, awesome Professor Brandon Robertson. Stage is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Cronoto. Thank you, Michael. And of course, to the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, it's always a pleasure to be here to do these What I Love About series. Actually, I just come to terms, this will be probably my 9th series I've done on the What I Love About series. So like Mr. Cronoto mentioned, go back to the studio archives to check out the past sessions that I've done. I've done a session on Paul Chambers, Christian McBride, Jacques Pastores, Charlie Hayden, who else did I did? Reginald Workman, you name it. I have plenty more coming up, but for today's series, I actually wanted to highlight a bass player that is not only to me highly notably recognized across the board in general, in all genres, but this man, I wrote when I was in graduate school. We're given a comprehensive exam. And so this is what you're given at the end of your graduate studies. And you have to write a very long thesis paper, really thick paper, and then you have to do a defense on it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one of the questions that was presented to me was pick a bass player from each decade of jazz, starting from the very beginning of the ragtime all the way to the 21st century. And so I had to go and dig, research, and really go through all these catalogs of bass players to really answer this question thoroughly. What I found was overwhelming information of just things that so many bass players have done. But this particular bass player, when I came across Mr. Charnett Moffett and I started researching his life and his background, I said, wow, this guy is like the real deal. Like, he's the real deal. He's not like a gimmick. he's just like a bona fide bass player, a God-given natural bassist. Mr. Charnett Moffett unfortunately passed away of a heart attack recently. And I wouldn't say about maybe 2 weeks ago. It was very recent. And when I found out the news, I immediately thought about all of the repertoire that I came across in his catalog. Just this sheer amount of pop artists and R&B artists he played with in the 90s, to his time working with, guitar extraordinary Stanley Jordan, and just even going back further in his childhood with his family. His father was the drummer of Ornette Coleman and was part of that profound quartet that Ornette Coleman presented in the 60s, which really pushed the shape and pushed the envelope of where jazz was leading during that time frame. And so he was right. His father, Charles Moffett, was right there on the forefront. And so Charnett Moffett was a man who was just born to do this. It's just to say, if you really know his background, it's amazing to see a bass player who was born into a family of musicians, who was born into the jazz idioms. It was embedded in him, and got his first professional, hit at the age of 8 on bass. And it was just given to him. It was meant for him to do. And so I want to highlight some of the things about what I love about Mr. Charnett Moffett. It was very, very, very sad, and it hit the jazz community hard, very heavy, especially the bass community, because he's just, if you've watched this man perform live or if you've seen videos, I mean, it's just like, it's literally, he was in his own lane. There was no one like him. Every bass player that I've covered in these series, there's no one like them. And Charnett Moffett is one in his own lane. So just to kind of move forward, here, let's go to the next line here. All right, so Mr. Charnett Moffett was born in New York, 1967. He was born right in the era of the Civil Rights Movement. He was born right in the era of Vietnam. He was born right in the era of where there was so much social justice happening in America and abroad. So this was a time also musically where you started seeing the emergence of pop music becoming popular on the radio. Now you're seeing jazz becoming commercialized. Almost a decade prior, where we're in the midst of the hard bop era, you had all these profound records, and later with Kinda Blue, Charles Mingus, Giant Steps, you had all of these big records that were and Dave Brubeck's Time Out, all these big records that were coming out. And so Charnett Moffett was born into an era where jazz was actually shifting. And it's crazy that his childhood was in the midst of all of this. I mean, literally like electronic, with the Rhodes piano being introduced, electric bass, was being introduced. You started seeing more freer patterns and freer improvisation happening. And then, of course, with his father being in Ornette Coleman's, quartet and the trio, I mean, this man literally featured in Golden Circle live in Stockholm. I mean, he was again born into it. And his name, actually Charnett, it derives from Ornette Coleman, who I learned was his godfather. and his father, Charles. So he took the Charles and the Ornette and kind of meshed them together, and that's how you have Charnett. So I thought that was really cool and meaningful. So again, he was already born and meant to do this. His father was a member of the Ornette Coleman Quartet. He made his professional debut at the age of 8 years old with his family's band in Tokyo, Japan in 1975. Now, I had to search, people. I had to search for this picture. Intensely search. Had to call a close bass friend of mine. Shout out to Amina Scott over in New Orleans. Close friend of mine, super killing bass player. She was able to retrieve the picture for me. And the gentleman, which I believe, and I hope I don't get his name wrong, it's Rocky Jones, was the photographer. His Instagram, Rocky Jones, he was the one that provided this photo from the festival that year that also Herbie Hancock led a band, and Oscar Peterson Trio was also there as well. So there was these pictures floating around of a young Charnett Moffett on bass at 8 years old. And I was like, I got to find this picture. I was able to find it. So here it is, everyone, right here. And as you can see, in his face, he meant to play the bass. This is what he was destined to do. He recorded 16 albums as a leader, premiering his first album, which was Netman in 1987. And Charnett had a very unique sound. It was an collection of all the different musical influences from his father, all the fusion music that was happening during the 70s. And then, of course, when we started emerging into the 80s, where you have synthesizers and more of pop and rock music, a lot of that started influencing into his sound. And so when he debuted as a leader, you can hear that very progressive forward, and I wouldn't say smooth jazz because I wouldn't classify him as that, but he just had this really 80s sound that was very new and fresh. Okay. Also, to shout out Mr. Charnett Moffett, my man was part of the Grammy-winning album Black Codes by Wynton Marsalis back in 1985. I believe he was somewhere, and I could be. This information. This part was always unclear to me, but I'm pretty sure someone will get the information for me. And I believe he was either 18, probably 17 or 18 years old when he debuted on that recording. He also premiered on Branford's record too, Royal Garden Blues, and he already had a staple for himself in New York City at a very young age. He spent a little time at Juilliard, but at this point, he was already a demanding bassist. He was already gigging, and he had been playing. His whole family. His sister's a drummer. He has a brother that plays tenor saxophone. His dad's a drummer. Like, his whole family is musicians. So all of these, I list a lot of the records that he was primarily featured and known for, and did really great work. Some of my favorite records on here that I could point out to you right now, Trilogy with Kenny Garrett. That's one of my favorite records right there. Wayne's, oh man, the name's not coming to me, but it's a tune on there that he plays the funkiest bass line. It's crazy. Wingspan with Mulgrew Miller, that's one of my favorite records too. That's actually one of the first, that record and Black Codes by Wynton Marsalis were probably the first two records I heard Charnett Moffett, and I was like, man, this dude sounds like he heavy with the bass. Like, he's going in. Another favorite record of mine, of course, is his debut record, which was Netman. And it's just because of that sound, and just he produced a lot of that album by himself. I mean, he has a lot of people featured on that record too. Some big names. His dad plays drums on there. Sister plays drums on there. Stanley Jordan's on there as well. Al Foster plays drums on a few tracks. Michael Brecker's on that record. So it's like he did well for this first recording. But go ahead and moving forward, here are some of the things that I actually like about Charnett Moffett. His beautiful, rich sound. Now, let me specify the sound of Charnett Moffett. It's big. It's very present. Every note he plays is with intent. Every single note he plays, it rings. It actually vibrates. You can hear the fullness of each sound of notes that are connecting. It's ridiculous how he's able to just play with it, like at the dexterity he can do, and then create this just beautiful, clear sound. You know, one of the bass players, obviously modern bass players are my favorite that are here, you know, Christian McBride has that same sound. It's like when he articulates his notes or when he plays like really fast triplets or run, like it's like very clear. Like it's there's no fluffle in there. And so he has this beautiful, rich sound that always resonates in the band. So like he can be by him. That's why he can do so much by himself, because he can fill up the whole room. His musicality on the double bass is remarkable. I mean, I've never seen a bass player who can actually use all his fingers. Like he literally can play a full chord, you know, 1, 3, 5, 7 with all four and execute it. I mean, very clearly and fluently, you know, just the way he approaches the bass, his way of thinking, and he has a very deeply rooted spiritual connection. It's almost the same deal like Percy Heath. Percy Heath had a very rooted connection. Reggie Workman, also another bass player who talked about his spirituality with with music and how he connects spiritually with music. And Charnett Moffett kind of like had that very same mentality, and you can hear it in his musicality when he plays the bass. He was a big contributor to the Young Lions era. And I say that because when Wynton Marsalis, and I specified at the beginning of this session that in graduate school, I had to pick a bass player from each era. Well, the neoclassical era of jazz, which would have been the resurgence of jazz in the 80s, due to Wynton Marsalis and his contributions with taking the traditional styles of jazz and modifying it to present day. And when he came out with Black Codes, you know, you had Ron Carter and then a very young Charnett Moffett, and then went and wins a Grammy. It's like, okay, now he's clearly has proven and shown to the world and to the industry that jazz is not dead. And so now, moving 5 years later, you have all these record labels that started popping up in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And they started giving out all these record deals to these young up-and-coming musicians. So you had guys like Brad Mehldau and Wallace Rooney and Joshua Redman and Christian McBride, Brian Blade, so there's so many cats. Stephen Scott, like there's so many cats, man, that was during this era, this Young Lions era, that benefited from what Wynton did in the 80s. And Charnett Moffett was one of the bass players that helped attribute to the push that helped the industry see like, wow, there's a whole plethora of young musicians out here. You know, I mean, you got to think too, also during this time, Wynton Marsalis had just came out of the Art Blakey school. You know, he was playing, you know, you got Jerome Jennings, young Peter Washington, young Benny Green, young, like these young guys who was playing with Art Blakey. And again, they were pushing the music forward to modify it, to adjust to what was happening, because so much music in other areas was going on and it was changing rapidly. So Charnett Moffett was in the midst of it. That's why when I love his first album, Net Man, because you hear all those influences. It's like he meshed it all in one. And the way he packaged it came out solid to where it really solidified his place as a bassist, as a composer, as a leader. And so therefore, during his contributions to the Young Lions era, it really helped the next generation kind of like keep the music moving forward. He had an extensive musical influence throughout each decades after the 90s. A lot of folks, he did a lot of compositions and arranging. And if you started to see the configurations of groups he was interacting with, he downsized a lot. You know, he didn't go with the traditional bass, piano, drums. He would have 2 guitars and bass, or he would have his trio, which was guitar, double bass, electric bass, and drums, you know, or he would have violin, guitar, bass, drums, maybe piano, you know. So he really pushed the envelope on, he stretched the bass, you know, which gets to my next point. He pushed the envelope in his solos and bass lines, and he really stretched the music and how the capacity of how far the double bass can reach. He never had boundaries and never had limitations. I really appreciated that and love that about his playing. His solos, when you watch him solo, and I'm going to get to the videos in a second, you're going to see that the way he solos is just like, dude, you have no chill. You just went from 0 to 3 stacks in an instant. You went from 0 to 3 stacks in an instant. You know, he's always pushing the envelope. Obviously, he's the son of the legendary drummer Charles Moffett from the Ornette Coleman Quartet. The counterpoint melodies in his bass playing that he would use, he has a lot of his several solo projects that he would just come up with these riffs, but these riffs would be so melodic that it transformed into its own song. And then he just turns it into its own song. And he's one of the few bass players in the industry that actually would display and really present the bass as a forefront instrument, you know, as a forefront voice versus being in the background and in its normal traditional setting. The influence that he had on Black Codes, you know, again, he was a young, Witten had a very young group, you know, Kenny Kirkland, you know, who was older obviously than Witten, but like still he had a young group. I think probably Ron Carter was the oldest member of that group at the time that played on that record. And, you know, just the sheer rawness and the sheer, like, I'm just going to go for it. Like, that's why I teach my students is like, you just got to go for it. Like a lot of times when you play bass, if you hold back, it really diminishes your sound. So sometimes you just got to push through it. And he did that on that record. And he was a monstrous electric bassist. Like, he's probably one of my favorite electric bass players because he just had this fluid, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, the way he would move up and down on the bass and just his sensibility. He's very sensitive, his touch, his feel. Everything was just locked in. He had a very powerful groove. Here's some of my favorite albums that he's on. Trilogy that I mentioned earlier by Kenny Garrett. Happy People, which has the song Happy People on it. And that is probably one of the most infamous bass lines. What? Every time I hear that song, I get happy. That's why you call it Happy People, because that bass line makes you real. It makes your shoulders bounce, you know. Magic Touch, which was an album that I think one of the first albums that he featured on in the 80s that him and Stanley Jordan did. And Stanley Jordan was really big in his time period, like really, really big. So this was a good look for him. As I mentioned before, he also was featured on another Marsalis project, Royal Garden Blues, Branford's project. One of my other favorite albums, and again, this was like probably the second album I listened to of Charnett Moffett, aside from Black Codes, which was Wingspan, Mulgrew Miller. Classic. I highly recommend you check that one out. This was a record my mom used to play a lot back when I was a kid. And I just found out recently, when I was researching for this session, I said, wait a minute, how did I not come across this? Rhythm of Love? I didn't know he was the bass player on that. It's Charnett Moffett. Played bass on Anita Baker's record. I didn't even know that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Of course, Netman, like I mentioned earlier, that's one of his first projects as a leader that he came out with. And then The Art of Improvisation was a really interesting record because he started really expanding like overtones and harmonic playing on the bass, which up until that point, he was dabbling with it. And then he started doing more of it in his later projects. But that was the project where I kind of started hearing that more. Okay, so here's some of the features that we're going to check out for today's session. The first one, this one, I can't play the whole video because it's so long, but I remember checking out this video. This was like a while back. It wasn't actually for this session. It's just, I'm a bass nerd. So every once in a while, I like to geek out on just bass videos on YouTube for a couple hours. Just sit and watch really killing live performances of my favorite bass players, or like try to work on some of their stuff. So Charnett played this trio gig with Stanley Jordan. He was playing guitar and piano. And then Jeff Tane Watts was on drums. So that was live at Birdland. Of course, the Netman, I know I keep talking about it, but I really love that song. Like that song is like, it's very poppy and smooth and 80s, but it's cool. It was his first project. African Village. Now, that album that McCoy came out with in the 60s, that this record is on, is fire, super fire. That was a hard record. But this live performance of them doing African Village, I kid you not, you're gonna see my man spaz on the bass. He's gonna go ham on it. The Bridge was a solo bass album that he came out with in the mid 2000s. And he used to come out with these music videos, which I thought was so cool. And I used to follow him every 2 or 3 weeks, he'll come out with a music video and it'll just be like a solo video, but it'd be so cool, like how they showcase it. And I'm like, man, I want to do something like that. So I found the video of one of his solo works called The Bridge. Now, then the next video is Higher Dimensions, which is a really hit recording that I love of his. It's from a record that he put out back in, I think, 2015. And this is with his trio. This is the trio that he was gigging with. Jenna, I forget her last name. She's a guitarist, really, really killing guitarist. And then the drummer's a young kid from San Francisco, Corey Garcia. And so this was live at Yoshi's in Oakland, California. And then the last one was of his, I believe it's a quintet that he put together. And this was at WGO, it was a live radio segment. And he has a violinist, bass, piano, drums. So let's go ahead and check these out. And you guys, we'll go through it. So this first one is with Stanley Jordan, Jeff Tane Watts on drums, and then Charnett Moffett on bass, live at Birdland. With the Mickey Mouse shirt on, y'all. Hey. Yeah. You guys see like his dexterity. See how fluid he is. Like that's what I said. Like his solo, the way he pushes his solos is crazy. And then he goes switch to the slap. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna switch that up. You see what I mean. So let's go back to the point where I said what I love about his solos and how he pushes his bass lines. You see what I'm talking about. Now, I wasn't playing around, folks. I wasn't playing around. This man gets busy. Now, this next piece here, this is one of my favorite joints. This is off of his first record that he came my way. And check out the suit game, bro. Check out the suit game. The suit game, don't sleep on the suit game. The suit game is solid. This is a style back then. Netman featuring his sister on drums, Camilo on percussion, Kenny Drew Jr. on synthesizer, Cordero. She's part of the family, the Moffett family that attribute to his musical upbringing. And so most of this record features a lot of members of his family. His dad plays drums on a few of the records as well. So tell me what y'all think about Mr. Netman. Hey. Okay. Now let me pause that real quick. This man was playing upright bass, by the way, y'all. That's not no electric synthesized bass or He's playing upright bass. You see why I like this album so much. It was probably the first album I heard, and my teacher at the time had told me, he's like, there was some few cats in the 80s that was doing these kind of records. He's like, you should check out Charnett Moffett's record. Yeah, man. I was like, okay. And then I was like, dang, hold up, you can play bass like that? That sounds hip. And his whole album is like that. So, I mean, he clearly wanted to showcase the double bass. So, yeah, I just wanted y'all to hear just a sample of that. Check out that record. That's a fire record. Yeah, this one right here. Let's go ahead and jump in this one right here. I ain't even going to. Okay, so I just wanted to give a teaser for a second because I was like, let me just start it off. African Village by McCoy Tyner. This live video right here, I probably have watched this video a 1,000 times, and it's like not even exaggerating. Like, everybody takes fire solos. You got a young Eric Harlan here on drums playing with all the goats and all these vets. You got another young Charnett Moffett holding down the low end, and he holds down the high end too. And you got the GOAT, Mr. Bobby Hutcherson on vibraphone, and of course the G himself, Mr. McCoy Tyner. And Mr. McCoy Tyner, really everybody stressed out on this one, but I'm gonna fast forward a little bit to Charnett's solo so y'all could just see this man got busy. But I want y'all to listen to some of Bobby's solo because Charnett's going ham under him. He's going ham right now. He's going ham right now. Yeah. Hold on. Let me, y'all, I don't understand. Y'all not understanding why I'm getting so excited listening to this. Because if you see a bass player that can create that much tension, like that much tension off of a pedal, like he is, the way he's hitting the string and he's attacking to emphasize, he's putting so much tension. It's like Eric Carlin's like, God, man, I don't know when you were trying to release this, man. Like you could feel him like tensing up because he's like, this is, man, the tension, the buildup right there. Man, that's like, you got to love that kind of stuff, man. When bass players can do that and execute that very well. Yeah. So I got to fast forward to his solo a little bit. Okay. Sorry, I know. Oh, wait. Okay. He's about to go off, y'all. He's about to go off. What? Come on, man. Wait. What? Yeah. Wait. Sorry, I had to get myself together. What do you say? Yeah, let's go to the next video, y'all. I can't even, I don't even know what to say, man. Yeah, this man here just snapped on that one. Yeah, we're gonna go to the next video here. This one is a solo work. I'm going to just kind of play a little quick clip of this one. This is the videos that I was mentioning to you all, where he would come out with these music videos of solo work that he would do. And this was a cool one. I really dug this one. It had a really nice little cool like bass riff to it. So you guys tell me what you think. Yeah. Ah. And it's smooth with it. Just so smooth with it. Just so smooth with it, bro. Just so smooth with it, bro. Just so smooth with it. So smooth with it. So smooth with it. Okay. All right. Next one. That was. And what I love about that is just the freeness of it. Super free. I'm only going to just play the melody to this one, because this one's killing though. But this is his trio live at Yoshi's with Jana Herson. And this was a trio that he played with, that he put together he played with for many years. Yeah. Yeah, that was that group. That was a group that he played with for a very long time, in most of his recent years, and that's a fun trio, man. I love listening to those three play together because you can tell they're just super in sync and super free. And what I love about Charnett's playing is just the freeness that he like. He doesn't like obviously he feels rhythm and time, but it's like the freeness of it, like how he utilizes space is just remarkable. This last clip I just want to show of a song that he wrote called Holy Spirit, and this is featuring a different configuration where he has guitar and violin added into the mix now, and so this is another great piece for us to conclude to the end of this session. So this is Holy Spirit. So I wanted to kind of leave you guys there on a uplifting spiritual note. That last piece, you can kind of hear the love and the passion, but the spiritual connection that he has within the music. You can feel it. You can hear it in his bass lines. You can hear it in his melodies. You can hear it in the connection with the rest of the musicians. Charnett has inspired an entire generation of highly motivated, forward-thinking bass players. There's a multitude of bassists who have attributed Hawker Hope, who is the current bassist for Kenny Garrett's quartet. Every time I listen to him play, I can hear a lot of influences from Charnett Moffett. I don't want to speak for him in that sense to say that he could be, but I can just hear a lot of that pull. There's a lot of other bass players that are on the scene that I can hear a lot of them, have been either inspired or have pulled some kind of of concept from Charnett Moffett's playing. One of the pioneers for the Young Lions era, like I said, and, him being so young on the scene and was able to kind of give a forefront for those who were coming in after him. One of the very few bassists to perform more than a 30 years period. I mean, this man has literally been performing since he was a kid, since he was 8, with his family. So, I mean, he broke into the scene at 16. So he's had a longevity, and it was unfortunate that his life had to end so sudden, and young at the age of 54. And, as sad as that was, man, like he left such a big catalog and a legacy that I don't think that his life will stop here. And I think his legacy will stand the test of times. And he was a major contributor to the modern jazz bass. And of course, I always end each of my sessions with all of these bass players that I choose have originality. And so, therefore, for today's session, I'd like to conclude and send my condolences to the Moffett family and to the rest of the jazz community who knew and shared the stage with Mr. Charnett Moffett. I didn't know him personally, but I knew him through the music, and he was a big influence on my life, big influence on my bass playing. Like I said, I chose him as the bassist for the era of the neoclassical period. And there were other bass players during that period who made huge contributions that easily could have fit that position. But Charnett Moffett, I wanted to highlight because he was somebody that, I felt that a lot of people, my peers, would only mention like the who's who names. And he's definitely one of those folks that needed to be discussed. So thank you for sharing this session with me today, and look forward to seeing you guys at the next one. Thank you very much.
Professor. Man, I'm blown away because you always, you paint the picture and tell the life stories of these musicians. I mean, it's one thing to hear their music, but it's another thing just to experiencing their upbringing. I mean, I learned about his family and just so much that I did not know about Charnett Moffett. I mean, this is amazing. So I thank you for doing that research. And if you join us live and if you have more comments, you can still go into that chat. But we would really like to hear from you if you have any topics or maybe another person that you would like us to discuss. You could always email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. We love to hear from our listeners. And also, please share. I mean, you've heard this masterful presentation that Professor Brandon Robertson did today. I mean, and here's the brilliant part about it. It's free. You can go on our archives. It's free. I mean, and there's people that pay hundreds of dollars for content like this or to go to a conference to hear something live like this. So take advantage of it. Share with a young upcoming musician or even a seasoned musician, and just tell them the great things that you hear here. So thank you so much again, Professor. I've been your host, Michael Kernodle. Until next time, everybody, like we always say, keep it swinging. Have a great day.
Keep it swinging.